finish to the points battle, it will no doubt still put on a good show. In fact, Spa has taught us to expect the unexpected. Let's see what it's got in store for us today as we get ready to watch round 4 of the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth today is Chad Irvine and DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Francorchamps is one of 2 Belgian tracks on iRacing. While it is the more famous of the 2, there's still always something you can learn about its monstrous 4 miles in length. Let's head to our track guide for a few tidbits. Welcome to Francorchamps. Less than an hour's drive east from the German border, this Belgian track has come to define racing for many different eras in the sport. It's no wonder it continues to entrance drivers when you look at the stats. The 7 kilometers over the course of a lap includes more than 330 feet in elevation change as it weaves its way through the Ardennes forest. Packed into this is 19 turns, some of which are considered among the most famous in the world of racing. Corners like La Source and Blanchemont have been on the lips of drivers for decades. But by far the most notorious is Eau Rouge and Rétillon. Typically referred to in name by just the first section, it dips low and swings left, then compresses and climbs to the right up a massive hill. The sequence ends with a completely blind crest that sweeps to the left and leads onto the incredibly long Kemmel Straight. The bravery required to be fast through there will pay off towards one of the most popular passing spots at Lacombe. Eau Rouge is exemplary of the rest of the circuit though. Most of the turns are incredibly fast and many include much of that signature elevation change. As jaw-dropping as the track is, you have to remember that this is the modern truncated layout. The old one, raced until 1979, was 14 kilometers in length, yet carried an average speed of 150 miles per hour. Present-day safety measures do cut down on the danger, but even in recent history, the circuit has proven deadly. It's clear why this track continues to be revered and respected by racers the world round. Well, often Spa is considered by many drivers to be one of the best circuits in the world, but DJ, with all 3 classes that we've got out here today, what's it going to be like?
Well, Joe, it's going to be a little chaotic as every race at Spa seems to somehow shake out to be. The middle sector in particular going to be very, very difficult for the faster cars to get around. There's a lot of sweeping corners, not a lot of heavy braking zones, really from when you come out of Ravage all the way down to Stavelot. But always some good overtaking zones here. Number 1, obviously coming down the Kemmel Straight into Lacombe. Also look for some good overtaking going through Blanchemont into the chicane of the final corner. La Source may provide a good fight back opportunity if you get overtaken out of the chicane. Now we are running the endurance layout here, so a couple things to keep in mind. Number 1, it is a very, very long pit lane. The pit lane will exit at the top of Rétillon all the way at the top of the Kemmel Straight. So that's thing number 1. And number 2, we have a little bit of a variable start and finish line. The start line for all of these drivers will be after La Source going down the hill into Eau Rouge. The finish line, however, will be farther back on the track just out of the chicane.
So something to keep in mind when we get close to that finish, if it is tight, that they don't go all the way back around. And hopefully the drivers are aware of that as well. Now, let's take a look at the championship, starting, of course, with the prototypes. David Williams still without a win, but leading up at the top with a pair of seconds and a third. Josh Wolf trailing him by about 8 points, with De Vries a little farther back. And then Carter Kundinger and Daniel Morad rounding out our top 5. 1 point between those 4th and 5th place drivers, so that could easily swing around. And of course, DJ, we've got the GT Pro as well. Why don't you run us through that?
Thank you, Joe. Well, you can see there Ross Booth currently holding a very, very small margin courtesy of a win in the first round and a second last time out at Le Mans. Kevin Binkley hot on his heels, though, with 2 third places and a second, so never been off the podium as Binkley. Thibault and Turcotte, a decent ways back of those two, really starting to develop here into a 2-horse race. And then Christopher Pies right up there in 5th, courtesy of his win. And you see that is a multiple way tie there with Jeffrey and Bow as well. So all of those guys really keeping it tight.
Then, of course, we've got the GTAM Championship, and even though it is the Amateur Championship, Chad, it is just as hotly contested.
While Kevin Santana for Lap Rats Racing has a 14-point lead over Ryan Walsh, the gap to the next car behind Joey Atterbury for DMG United, just 1 point behind Walsh. Meanwhile, Jeremy Rhodes is 22 points back for Autobahn North, and Kevin O'Keefe wraps up the top 5, only 36 points back from your leader for the warm-up lap.
Then, of course, we've got the Teams Championship done a little bit differently here. You have one from each class contributing points, so your team is not within the same class as you. You're spread apart. And up at the top, while DMG has only a 5-point lead, which is very small in this Teams Championship, what's interesting is they only have 1 win on the board so far, and that is out of all 3 classes. It was in the first round from Darling. Lap Rats in the same situation, actually. Their they had 2 victories, I should say. Santana taking both one at Daytona and then one at Le Mans. Other than that, they don't have any victories on the board. So as you can tell, consistency plays a big part in this. It's not necessarily having the hot shoes on your team, but those that can just bring home the points all across of each of your teammates. Then VRS Satellite, Autobahn East, and Autobahn North round out our top 5 this early stage in the season. DJ, real quick, why don't you give us an update on what this race itself entails?
Well, for those who are unfamiliar with the series, this is one of the endurance races. So the 4th of 14 rounds, it will be a 90-minute endurance race. We have multiple classes across the field. The prototype, the P1 cars, those are going to be driving the new Dallara LMP2s. The GT Pros, those are going to be the GTEs, and the drivers have a choice there between the BMW M8, recently released, the relatively new Corvette C8, and the old school Porsche 911 RSR, although it should be noted that only Olivier Turcotte is driving the BMW in that field. Then working your way down, we have the GTAMs. You can drive that old Merc that everybody loves, the Audi R8 or the Ferrari 488, but once again, not a lot of discrepancy there. Sean Reese and Wolshine, the only ones driving that Mercedes, as well as Daniel Perry, so 3 of the Mercedes there. There is no fast repair, so if you've been it, your day's pretty much done. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we do have fuel limits for these cars to ensure that there will be pit stops. Prototypes are limited to 90% fuel, and the GTs at 67% fuel.
And remember, this is the endurance format, so we'll see at least 2 pit stops. Right now, we're in the midst of the qualifying session for the prototypes to determine the overall pole. This is our provisional pole sitter, Jason DeVries, but David Williams, who took a couple laps to try to finally get one on the board, does so and puts himself into 4th place. So our points leader is at least going to be starting somewhere within the field and not at the back of his group, and make that 5th now, as Paul Darling has now found his way onto the front row.
It's a good lap there for Darling as we watch Bradley Haley working his way on a new lap. That weird little quirk of the timing and scoring lines, as we talked about, taking place. Here comes Jason DeVries. That right about there is where that scoring line is. So DeVries on an out lap here. He is blindingly quick. People need to watch out. But here comes Billy Smith, currently 3rd place with a 2:02.422. He's got 2 more corners, and then he'll cross the stripe.
Out and around the bus stop. 2:02.421 for Billy Smith. Does it come down? No. Looks like he had an off track that time around. Billy Smith is one that is looking for a much better finish these days. He wound up with, unfortunately, a little bit off the top spots in all 3 rounds so far. Mike Major, in the meantime, is our only prototype that still needs to put one on the board. Let's see if that bright blue number 2 is able to get a clean one in. As he comes around to the timing line, it is going to be no. Does not get a clean one. John Ulmer just behind him also, unfortunately, does not set a time that lap around.
And Joe, you're really doing a good job here mentioning how many guys are having some trouble on the track, keeping it within the track limits. That's going to be something to watch here today. There's a 36 incident limit. Track limits are really tight here, really strict at Spa-Francorchamps, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens if guys get too aggressive with those towards the end of the race.
I wouldn't be too shocked if we saw at least one or two drivers get DQ'd before this is over, especially if the battling is fierce. Kevin O'Keefe did not make a faster lap that time. The 29 stays in 11th. We're still waiting on Mike Major to put a lap down, which I believe he will be gridded at the back of his field if he doesn't set one. Bradley Haley, that 2:02.6 was about 0.2 off of his quickest lap. So for the time being, Jason DeVries sits pretty at about 0.139 ahead of the next nearest car. And in fact, DeVries is just now coming to the line for this one. Looks like that one will not be quicker.
And even though DeVries does have that advantage, Joe, Darling, Smith, and Haley, 2, 3, 4, separated by just hundredths of a second. All of them in the 2:02.4s as we see Smith crossing the line here, trying to improve a little bit. He is unable to. So that absolutely minimal gap between those three is staying consistent.
Ways to go before Mike Major gets down to the line as he's just come out of Stavilo. So we follow him as he picks up speed through one of the fastest portions of the circuit, 175 miles an hour through Blanchimont, 179 before he gets onto the brakes and weaves it through one of the slowest parts of the track. Again, still looking for that first clean one. Let's see if this will do it as he crosses the line. A 2:04 flat. That will put him on the board in 15th, just ahead of David Warner.
So many opportunities on this track as we see David Williams crossing the line. I believe that's a warm-up for David there. So many opportunities on this track to both gain and lose time, Joe. It's such a mega lap, and there are so many incredibly tricky corners as we see Joshua Wolf coming through the bus stop right now, currently sat 6th, rushing to the line. He is going to be able to improve right up into 3rd for Joshua Wolf.
Great lap. Kevin O'Keefe also finds a little bit of time, and that only takes him up one position, but it'll be onto the 5th row. O'Keefe still has a shot for at least one more. It does take quite a while to get around here. Bradley Haley up next, 2:02.446. 4:45 is actually only 5/100ths faster than his previous lap, so that's not going to get him any higher on the grid.
It's not, but it's going to make that incredibly close. Now, 4-car battle for that second spot, even tighter. Jason DeVries crossing the line and goes faster with a 2:02.239.
Leave Peterson up next. That one's not going to decrease his quickest time. So up next, it's going to be Billy Smith. You talked about how tight it is between 2, 3, 4, and 5. 18/1000, so that Smith has to go quicker. And he's definitely going to do it way more than that. In fact, Smith goes to the pole.
Mega run for Billy there. That is really good as we ride on board with Mike Major now, working his way through Blanchimont. This is absolutely hair-raising as a driver. Your whole body is telling you you have to lift, you can't make it, but the car can do it, and you've got to just keep the pedal in. Now hard braking down into bus stop. Little bit of action coming off of those curbs. These LMP2s do not like the curbs. Now Major's going to try to cross the line and go a little bit faster. He does.
Oh, but it didn't count. He had an off track. John Ulmer, similar situation. And they are starting their final flyer more than 2 minutes to do a lap around here, so they'll not be able to start another one after this. David Williams is not going to go any quicker that time by a 2:02.872. That's only his second lap that's counted. David a little bit under the gun here. What about Josh Wolf? Let's see if this one is faster. No, it is not. He stays put in P4.
Report on Mike Major for you, Joe. He ran wide in Pujol in his last lap. That's why it did not count. And then immediately after finishing that lap, he towed back to the pits, so he's not going to get another lap in.
And Jason DeVries also is in pit lane, so he's not going to be able to take the pole away from Billy Smith. Too long to start a lap. as Mark Wilson is going to be the next to cross the line just as the checkered flag comes out, but his lap does not count. Paul Darling does, and he actually takes the pole away from Smith.
By 0.02 of a second does Darling do it. Absolutely amazing. Here comes Peterson across the line. He is currently sat in 9th. Will he be able to improve? He cannot.
That takes us all the way back to John Ulmer. And the 13th spot, the 902, still coming through Fanyes. You can see we've got quite a bit of difference in the weather across the track. Although they don't have rain here yet, the clouds are very heavy over the front of the track. But here on the back side of things, it's still pretty bright. And then he'll start to hit this cloud cover, and it'll darken up as he approaches the front stretch.
And Joe, that will cool down the track ever so slightly, so these drivers are going to have to be keeping an eye on those shadows, making sure they know what's hot, what's not, and what's going to give you the best grip. But here comes Ulmer down into the chicane, pushing, trying to improve on a 13th.
It looks like that shadow's just starting to go away, so he's not going to get that cool track as Ulmer comes to the line. A 2:03.1 is 0.3 quicker than his best lap, and that'll put him in at 12th.
Here comes Cunninger. Cunninger looks like he had an off track, not able to improve. David Williams able to improve, jumps his way up to 4th place. And here comes Joshua Wolf. He is the last runner out on track.
Ooh, looks like he had a big bobble on the first apex of the bus stop. That was all out of sorts. Even if it does count, I'm not sure it'll be faster, and it is not. That will settle out our qualifying here today for round 4 of the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge. Let's go through the starting grid with our prototypes first. Paul Darling takes another pole with Billy Smith starting in 2nd. It'll be Jason DeVries in P3 and David Williams to his outside in 4th. Josh Wolf starts in 5th today with Bradley Haley in the 6th spot, and Bobby Tinsey will be P7. Luke Carbonneau starts P8. It'll be Leif Peterson in 9th, and rounding out row 5, we've got Kevin O'Keefe in 10th. Then it's Mark Wilson starting the next sheet in 11th. John Ulmer starts 12th today. Carter Kundinger starts in 13th with Robert Kanchan in P14. Last two will be David Warner in 15th and Mike Major in 16th. DJ?
Ross Booth is going to start off on the pole for those GTEs, followed by Brian Bennett behind him. Kevin Binkley will be lining up in 3rd, followed by Young Park. Stefan Jeffrey and Paul Slavinik going to be lining up behind them. Mo Islam will be 7th, followed by Olivier Turcotte. Then Paul Lindsay and Eric Antilli will be lining up behind them in 9th and 12th place. Sheldon Rosenbaum will be in row 14, followed by Dominic Dornenberg, Jerry Muller, and Jimbo Pfeiffer lining up behind them. And then rounding out your GTEs will be Lionel Duprat in 31st spot overall.
And then finally for the GT3 class, Jeremy Rhodes has the pole position in class there with Joey Atterbury on his outside. Row number 2, Ryan Robertson and Shane Hunter. Then Kevin Santana and Luke Schmidt, Mark Kudrowski, and Joe Stifel in the 4th row. Then Dale Green and Stock Ryder in the 9th and 10th position there. Then Joey Trungale and David Perry, 11th and 12th in class. They are going to be followed up then by David Perry and Matt Owens, with Jared Eaton and Chris Sherburne in 14th and 15th, with Sean Reese 16th in class. And the last two in the GT3 is going to be Cody Franklin and Sheldon Waslin in wrapping up the field for the GT3s.
I do see that Woloshin is not currently in the session, so I think he's not starting today. Same thing with Vance Bow, who looks like he will not take to the grid as we wait for the last of our field to line up. Relatively large field out here today of 49 cars that will supposedly be taking part. We'll see if anybody else unfortunately doesn't make it to the grid. Hopefully all 49 will be able to get out there. It is a little bit later in the day here for this 90-minute race, just past 5 p.m. virtual standard time. And as we traditionally do here in the Autobahn series, we'll start off with DJ for our picks today. Who do you think is going to win in the Protos and the GT Pro?
Well, Joe, I'm going to be watching in third place, Jason DeVries. Very, very aggressive driver. Always fun to watch out on the track. He is going to be my pick to jump up from third. And then I think in those GTEs, well, if I got to put my finger on it, I'm going to go with third place again. I think that's going to be a lucky position. Kevin Binkley has been very, very consistent this season, and I think he's going to finally be able to crack into that top spot.
And Chad, I know you're the new guy in here today, but pressure's on. Who do you think's going to win it?
Well, I like DeVries in the prototype class, but I can't just follow the leader. I'm going to go one step above there from the starting grid and go with Billy Smith. And then for the GTEs, I think that there's a reason that a lot of the drivers picked the Porsche. So I'm going to go with Brian Bennett starting in second place there as well.
Well, you got to give us for the GTM, though. That's the class you're covering.
Well, then I have to go. You know what? If I'm going to go with the second place in the first two classes, I have to go with Joey Atterbury starting second in the Audi in GT3s as well.
I think that's a good pick. The real-world IMSA driver certainly should have a good head on his shoulders here today. As we wait for them to come around the source, they're not allowed to go until after that hairpin that is usually the first corner when you see races such as Formula One come here. But here for sports car racing, the endurance format, they're going to go after this turn. Paul Darling will have control of the fields. Billy Smith waiting, almost looked like he wanted to go there for a moment, but the green flag is out. Darling gets a decent jump as they accelerate down towards Eau Rouge. Top three already single file. Anybody dare trying to take it too wide through Eau Rouge and Raidillon? Not so. Looks like everybody going to get it sorted out. Let's go to the GT Pros.
And Ross Booth gets a good jump there on Brian Bennett. It looks like that's Kevin Binkley starting to challenge already, but he's going to fall back into line. Everybody relatively going single file. Nobody really wants to take this double wide up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. Very smart heads up from our GTE field.
And Rhodes with the lead. He's on pole and got a good jump coming out to the start finish straight. And he gets a good run up Eau Rouge and Raidillon. And he's got some trouble. Oh, he's getting loose, and he loses the back end coming out of Raidillon. And he's going to let the whole field, and he collects another driver there. Multiple cars involved.
Oh, Shane Hunter, one of them. And the 34, it appears, as the 15 comes to a halt. Ooh, another big hit for Shane Hunter. Meanwhile, as that was happening, we had a change for the top spot in the prototypes. Billy Smith has taken the lead away from Paul Darling. And then up at the front, Joey Atterbury. Good call on this one, Chad. He's already taken the top spot away from Robertson.
It's been incredible to see this start. The GT3 class is in shambles, but you mentioned Joey Atterbury pulling out to a strong lead, and Robertson right behind.
So as we watch the prototypes go through Blanchimont for the first time at speed, Billy Smith leads ahead of Paul Darling. He almost lost second place as well as Jason DeVries was taking a look on him, but he stayed put. Outbrakes himself a little bit into the bus stop, but otherwise not seeing any sort of attacks from anybody. They're just going to go single file. Oh, but we got a big accident in the background. I see Kevin O'Keefe involved in that. I think that was John Ulmer and Mark Wilson as well.
Yeah, Joe, it looks like O'Keefe just got a little bit loose coming through the bus stop, and that caused him to spin and collect everybody behind. But just a quick mention, don't need to go to it, but Brian Bennett was able to take Ross Booth going down into...
More trouble. Young Park is around, and multiple cars are hitting him in the GTE class as well. This has been a messy start for all three classes coming through this first lap. Park falls well down the order because of it. See what kicked off this for the number 36. I think he got a little bit of help, if I'm honest.
Well, here he is in the center of your screen. He's going to go to the outside, dives in a little bit late on the brakes, a little bit scared of going into that. Oh, yep, gets a little bit checked up from those cars in front, gets tagged in the back, and a little bit of an aggressive, unsafe release there from Young Park. And I have to say, stewards may want to have a look at that.
That was Stefan Jeffrey in the 249 Porsche that tipped the back of him and caused that spin. You can see Park is at least still running, but he's in ninth here. Oh, and is that a slowdown penalty for Sheldon Rosenbaum in his Corvette that was going slow down the Kimmel straight? Off track goes Park through Lacombe. It's been an eventful lap here for the number 36. He gets it back on course, doesn't hit anything, but This is causing a chain reaction behind him. It's Sheldon Rosenbaum now attacking around the outside into Ravage, and Tilly to his inside, and then that's Stephen Jeffrey still involved, along with Mo Islam and Paul Lindsay.
Absolutely great battles there through Jackie Ick's corner. You normally don't see a pass there, but they're getting it done. Very uncharacteristic start here for Young Park. He is normally a pretty consistent, albeit aggressive driver, and that start clearly getting into his head, not driving at his best right now.
See if things can calm down a little bit now for our GT Pro drivers in the mid-pack. As up at the top, Paul Darling briefly held the fastest lap. Josh Wolf going to take that away from him. In fact, I'm keeping half an eye on that as we continue to keep the cameras here, because it's an absolute train from first in the prototypes all the way down to essentially 9th place. I think we might have a pass here, DJ, because Paul Darling's got a very good run up Kemmel. Smith is going to find the same move pulled on him that he pulled on Darling on lap 1. And Paul is to the inside. He tries to fight him down into the braking zone, but gives up on it and slots into line.
Yeah, and it looked like for a second there, Paul Darling was kind of thinking twice about it, poked his nose out, and it wasn't quite the speed he wanted, so he ducked back behind, got a little bit more draft, and was able to pull away. But yeah, this is an absolute draft train up here in this LMP2 class. Throw a blanket over the top 8 pretty much, as they all run within a second of one another.
Right on board, watching Smith chasing Darling down the hill. Behind him, De Vries and Williams are very close for that 3rd spot. The last step on the podium as they exit Puhan. And not sure if we're going to see Williams make a go at it here in Ifanyes. And no, as close as he is, he didn't really feel like trying to stick his nose in that early.
No, you really don't want to try to make passes in this second sector, Joe. I talked about it at the top. It is a very, very fast-flowing part of the track. You are much better off waiting to make that move into chicane, waiting to make that move into La Source, or down off the Kemmel Straight. Trying to make it into those second sector corners is just a one-way ticket to disaster.
Going back to the lead in the GT Pros, Bennett is just about 2 tenths ahead of Ross Booth, so very tight fight here for the lead in our middle class.
Yeah, and you saw Ross Booth poking his nose out to the outside there, thinking about making that move and heeding my advice and not trying to do it through Sector 2, but he has been very, very quick behind Bennett, really, really hounding him. But the problem is we're coming down to a little bit of car model problem here. The Porsche a little bit faster in a straight line, albeit the Corvette behind him, Booth's car, that is a little bit faster directly off the line. So Bennett is able to pull away down Kemmel ever so slightly. Booth able to get a good jump, but he may be able to do something here. Good closing speed through Glauchemont.
Oh, but he starts to lose it out of that fast left-hander. Just a little bit too much of the wake, it seems. Interesting to note that among these two, Bennett just won the last round and Booth won the first round. We haven't had a repeat winner yet in the GT Pro class. The one that hasn't won in this group is 3rd place driver Kevin Binkley, despite being 2nd in the points. So he's probably going to be hungry for victory, and as he watches these two fight, I'm sure he's cheering them on.
Well, Binkley right now is holding the crown for Mr. Consistent. He hasn't won yet, but he's been on the podium in all 3 rounds. And Joe, we've seen time and time again in this Autobahn series, as well as any other iRacing series that we cover, that being consistent like that, even if you don't take a win, may very well be the way to take a championship.
And I got a report here from the GT3 class, guys. Atterbury is holding on to the lead about a second, maybe a second and a half over Robertson, but just behind them, about 4 seconds back from 2nd place. The battle for 3rd is heating up. Santana with Joe Stifle right on his back. He's been on his back bumper this entire time, basically since the race went green. Back and forth, the gap grows and it shrinks right back down. Santana, though, still holding on to 3rd spot in class.
Stifle looks like he had a poor exit coming out of La Source. Now, if he can get the run off of Radillon, he might be able to keep himself safe. Nope. I think Joey Trungale's going to use that slipstream to the best effect as he goes to the outside. Can he finish this off into the braking of the chicane? They come up to it, and he's well ahead, easily by Joey Trungale. Now takes 4th with that.
Yeah, that battle's been forming for a while between Santana and Stifle. Then Trungale out of nowhere. That little mistake from Stifle really opened the door, and you saw the same manufacturers there between Stifle and Trungale, but Trungale able to just capitalize, get that position. Now has his eyes set on third spot.
Down through No Name. And though those two were close to Kevin Santana, all this fighting between them has cost them a little bit. We watch from on board Kevin, who currently leads our points in the GTM category. Sure, the third place will certainly be good for him, but I think he'd like a little bit more than that. Question is, can he get the pace to try and run down guys like Robertson and Atterbury here early on? And let's not forget, we haven't seen the traffic be hit yet by our prototypes. That could always change the complexion.
It always does seem to change it. The prototypes currently right now making their way through the ending part of the Kemmel Straight. So I would imagine, Joe, we're about 5, maybe 8 or 9 laps away from this overtake starting to happen.
Yeah, it's a long track to get around, and even with the big field, it does take a little bit to try and catch up to the back of them. Santana keeping himself well clear of Stifle and Trungale down into the braking for the bus stop chicane. Love this golden hour here at Spa. Makes a beautiful track all the more pretty. Coming off the corners, it seems like Joey Trungale just having trouble trying to accelerate as well as Kevin Santana is.
Yeah, he gets a much better exit, Trungale, or much better entry Trungale does, but Santana just pulls it right back out on exit. We saw that into the chicane, and then we just saw that in turn 1 as well.
We head towards Eau Rouge. We've still got a little bit of a battle going in at second place in our prototypes. It seems, and actually they're hitting the traffic right now as Billy Smith is having to weave in and out of GT cars. He's bringing along Jason DeVries. This is for that second spot. Jason with a great run up and over the hill. Is he going to be able to complete it?
I think he is. He's going to go to the outside, as you see there. Smith going defensive. This is going to be tricky. That GT3 in front, providing a good draft for DeVries. He's going to make it work. Smith just slots into line behind DeVries there, and whoa, very close for both of the drivers around the GT3.
Christopher Sherburne not wanting any part of that. He makes sure and stays out of the way. A look down to the inside as Billy Smith tries to sneak attack Jason DeVries into Ravage. Doesn't sort itself out, and Jason DeVries remains in second place. Now, what about David Williams suddenly on the back of them? As the 01 approaches through Pujan, we're hitting that middle portion of the lap that you were talking about, DJ, where it's just no heavy braking zones.
It is, and you see it. It looks like Williams may get slightly caught out again, as he did before, but he's going to be able to keep it nice and close behind Billy Smith. But you see what that traffic can do to these prototypes, really, really elongate the gaps. Great job there from Jason DeVries, being able to clear those GT3 cars and give himself a little bit more of a gap back to Billy Smith. That gap actually is up to 1.2 seconds as of now.
And behind them, David Williams got caught out big time, allowing Robert Tinsey to close in. This is for fourth place. It also has Josh Wolf involved in the mix. As we ride on board with Williams, looking back at Bob the Blade. They slow it up into the bus stop just as they come across David Sockrider. Is Sockrider going to be able to get out of their way? Oh, it's still slowing up David Williams. Tinsey gets ever closer, coming down the Grand Prix pit straight. And a little bit of a look to the inside from Josh Wolf on top of it.
A little bit of look, but he thinks better of it, and I gotta say, I think that's a good call. He may catch this just right as they go. Here it comes. Wolf is gonna get the double draft going up through Eau Rouge and Radion and onto the Kemmel Straight, so he may be able to make a good move on Tinsey here. Look how close he is already. This move has got to be coming, Joe.
Tinsey's practically a sitting duck down the Kemmel Straight. Josh Wolf knows it. And so does Tinsey. He does not defend at all. In fact, he breaks very early, allowing Wolf through.
And now Wolf is going to set him sides on David Williams. Very hard. That's going to be Williams getting caught in a sandwich there. Oh, my goodness.
And that was side-by-side fourth position. That is still that battle for fourth place we were looking at earlier in GT3s.
Yeah, that's Stifle and Trungale that were trying to decide their own position. That's why they were so distracted about what was happening behind them. So that...
Look what this does. It opens up the gap for Santana. About 3 seconds now between himself and Trungale. He has just gotten blessed by the LMP gods. He has a big gap out behind.
Really has changed the complexion of things. We're still watching that LMP2 battle because Wolf and Tinsey are still very close together. P5 for Josh Wolf now. Tinsey now down to 6th.
Yeah, Tinsey's going to be kicking himself as courtesy of that GT3 traffic, but he is going to be in the catbird seat here now as they make their way onto this sweeping backstretch before they hit Blanchimont. But it looks like Tinsey didn't exactly get the best run that he wanted to there. They go into Blanchimont here. These cars do generate a decent amount of downforce, so he may have to lift ever so slightly that dirty air disrupting him. But look at that closing speed, Joe. Heavy braking into the chicane.
Still looking on it. Oh, we got to go to our lead in the GT Pros, though, because Booth just took a big look on Brian Bennett, and they're still towing along Kevin Binkley. Now, he's not nearly as close as P1 and P2, but he's certainly in the popcorn position. We head down towards Pouhon once more. We ride on board with Booth as we watch them take this double apex left-hander.
Such a tricky corner to get right, but both Booth and Bennett absolutely taking that very, very well. Get down slightly onto the brakes here, Joe. It's all brush braking at this point. No heavy braking. Ooh, a little bit of kick up there from Brian Bennett, just taking a full advantage of the track onto the curves now, working their way onto the stretch. You can see the Corvette able to keep up very closely when he has to get onto the loud pedal, but very hard to keep up on at a full chatter as that Porsche is just so fast in a straight line.
Coming up to Blanchimont, who he's approaching once again. The slipstream's really helping him, but then there is this fast left-hander, and he drops back off once again. The opportunity is so tantalizingly close every time they come to the bus stop. If he could just get around that corner a little bit better behind the 161.
And you see Booth taking a little bit of an opposite, a contrary line there through the bus stop chicane, just trying to find a little bit more speed on Brian Bennett. Now they're going to go into La Source. This is going to be the opportunity for Bennett in that Corvette. Let's see what he can do. Is he able to draw it in? He looks relatively close. He's got about 4/10 of a gap in front.
This is where that slipstream will help him all over again through the famous Eau Rouge and Radion complex. And on top of the hill, I think Booth's going to definitely tow up to him, but I'm not sure if he's got enough to be able to get side by side and challenge. Weaving back and forth, Bennett trying to break the slipstream. It does a little bit, just enough that Booth can't really outbrake him.
Oh, I've got to be very frustrated there if I'm Ross Booth. That is such a hard thing to see. But, Joe, we got to jump back to that battle in 5th in the LMPs as Tinsley trying to make another whirl on Josh Wolf into La Source. Didn't happen, but Tinsey is right up the back, and this battle has allowed for Carbonneau and Peterson to pull up right behind him.
So now it's a 4-car fight as the prototypes use their downforce across these quick uphill corners, and seems Josh Wolf will unfortunately not have much to try and keep Tinsey back, a reverse of what we saw not long ago between the pair of them into Lacombe. No, but Tinsey's going to have to work hard under braking to seal the deal, and he's got it.
Great move from Robert Tinsey, just getting the full momentum. You saw how much speed he carried off the top of Radion, and that now pulls Luc Carbonneau right up behind the tailpipe of Joshua Wolf, but Wolf is still really much going to be on the attack here.
Down and out of no name. Really helped Luc Carbonneau. He wasn't that close behind, and now he is right there. The trio takes it around Pouhon. Let's see if they slow each other enough that Pearson can now get under the rear wing of the 492 on top of it. They'll hit a little bit of traffic in the form of Pies. He's currently last of our GT Pros in his Porsche number 40. As they come into Stavelot, this could hold up Tinsey a little bit. No, he's going to be able to duck inside. What about Josh Wolf? Oh, momentum interrupted. No, it isn't. He's still got a good run on Robert Tinsey. And I think they might go side by side through Blanchimont, depending how brave he is. No, Josh Wolf gives a lift. He's going to wait to try and outbrake him. This allows Carbonneau to catch up, and still nobody able to make the move down into the braking of the chicane.
Oh, he just caught that run at the absolute worst time. He had so much speed, and it is so tricky to take anything other than the racing line through Blanchimont. So Josh Wolf now thinks about going down the inside of Lasource. Nope, we're going to see that same move on a different day, Joe. I think he's going to wait and try to get the pass done going over the top of Radion.
Yeah, I definitely think that's exactly what's happening here. We're still not even to the first pit stop of this race, so we haven't reached a third of the way through here. Now, these two towing each other along, are they going to pull Luke Carbonneau up enough that he could try and make it 3 wide? Wolf pops out to the outside of Bob the Blade, and he's much quicker in a straight line. Robert Tinsey may be having a little bit more downforce on that machine.
These are open setups, Joe, so that is a very distinct possibility. And at a track like Spa, no matter what car you're running, you always hear about how to compromise on the setup. Well, do I give up a little bit more speed on the straightaways to get better through that Sector 2? Or do I struggle a little bit through Sector 2, maybe not able to go as fast through the twisty bits, but I am just blindingly fast in a straight line? And that could be exactly what these guys are playing with, the heave and the hoe of that.
Update for you guys back in GT3's Stifle once again able to get by Trungale. Trungale then made a mistake and cut some grass going through, I believe it was Ravage. But now Stifle gaining about half a second to about a second a lap over Santana in third. So he's about a second and a quarter behind for third, trying to fight back for that podium spot.
Obviously valuable points there over the course of the race, but the GT Pros saw Ross Booth finally take a little bit of a look down into the final chicane. Brian Bennett is handling it well, though. He hasn't been shaken at all by the heavy pressure from that number 03 down into Eau Rouge. Still towing along Binkley as well, just behind them in his Corvette. Ooh, this is the best run we've seen yet from Ross Booth. What's he going to do here?
He's going to make the move, I think. Joe Bennett got a little bit out of line at the top of Ravage, on the top of Radion rather, but here he goes, down to the inside. Outbreaks him. Booth has got the line. He's got the corner through the second part of the cone. Move him into first place.
Booth takes that VRS satellite racing car up to the top spot for max points. Kevin Binkley did gain some time through that exchange as they now plunge through Ravage and into No Name. It's the first time we've seen the lead switch around here in the GT Pro class.
It is, and now Booth has got to pray he can get some time out in this middle sector so he doesn't fall victim to the same draft we've seen.
We got a change for second happening in the prototypes, maybe? Not quite. It's not over yet as both of them slide through No Name. That's DeVries challenging Smith, but Smith has denied him.
Billy Smith driving a very good defensive race, it looked like there. That DeVries was just trying to catch him napping, catching some lap cars, though. That may have cost Billy Smith almost a couple of hundredths of a second, but he is able to keep it up and keep it going. More lap traffic in front. This is going to get hairy.
Oh, they're going to stay out of the way. That's Pfeiffer. He's been in this game a long time here in Autobahn. He knows where to place the car, but the two of them are very hot right now, vying for second place. Smith looks like maybe he got compromised on the exit of Stavelo 2. And here comes DeVries. He sizes him up, comes back to the slipstream, waits in line. Is he going for the overtake in the braking zone? He falls back a little bit. It's not going to happen here.
Joe, they just can't seem to get it to work down through Blanchimont like that. You saw DeVries trying to take an alternate line, keeping a little bit of clean air on the front nose of that car, but even with that, he had to lift a little bit, and that compromised any chance of an overtake he would have down into the bus stop. So now he's going to have to try to do this the old-fashioned way and do it through Eau Rouge and up the Kemmel Straight.
And don't forget, that's David Williams that you see in the blue and red 01 just behind them. So they could bring him into the equation too. Let's see what DeVries has here as they pick up pace already up to 180 miles an hour. And a little bit more of that traffic. Paul Slavonic, who's fourth in the GT Pros, just ahead of them. Not going to quite catch him on the Kimmel Straight, unfortunately, which means they're going to have to try and do it here in the twisty bits into Malmedy. Takes the apex away from the GT Pro car just in time, and Smith and De Vries are able to sneak through.
I thought for sure, and so does Williams there, as you see, I thought for sure that that was going to cost Jason De Vries some time, but it clearly did not. De Vries right up behind the exhaust pipe of Smith, still just trying to apply maximum pressure.
Getting close to that pit window, too. I wonder who we're going to see come in, but this is a thirsty track, especially for these prototypes, with how long they are full throttle around here. So maybe it'll be a little bit tight. Maybe it could be a case of everybody trying to fuel save a little bit throughout this race. We continue to ride on board with David Williams, our leader in the points in this prototype class, but currently off the podium in this race. Oh, and a big moment having to go off the track, having to swallow one of those 1Xs. Billy Smith finds himself now side by side with Jason De Vries, who thinks better of it. Oh, but unfortunately that puts him side by side with David Williams. They're gonna bang doors. He comes back to the racing line. He hasn't lost out completely yet, but now he has to break for the corner, and Williams getting a little bit aggressive to take that third spot.
That is why you can never take a spare moment to breathe here at Spa, Joe. Absolutely incredible heads up to know where he is, to be able to make perfect capitalization on that bit of slow traffic. But coming up in front of them, that is the GTE battle we have been following. Booth, Bennett, and Binkley, the 3 Bs. That is where they are, so they want to catch these guys quickly, as these guys are still battling for position in front of them.
As we watch our leaders in the GT Pros, they've spread apart just slightly. They're coming up on some of the GTM traffic. That's Jared Eaton in front of them. And they've got the battle that we were just watching just behind them right now. This is about to get crazy.
I don't know how they got through that without making contact, but here come the LMP2s. Smith diving down to the inside of Bennett. That's going to catch Bennett out. He's going to lose a lot of time to Ross Booth in front of him, with those LMP2s still continuing to squabble. Oh, as Bennett starts to lose it through Jackie Hicks. I think he saved it.
Just barely. And somehow that Porsche stayed pointing the right way. Can we get a replay? This would be a great onboard for the number 161. He did lose second place out of it.
He did, but we can watch it here. You see him working his way around that long ravage, and then here he goes. He's compromised in position, just gets a little bit too much brakes on. Oh, amazing catch. But Joe, we've got to jump back up to live, because David Williams was able to get by Billy Smith.
He did indeed. Out of the exit of Puhan, he managed to get a better run and demoted Billy Smith down to third. So Williams up to second after sitting patiently in fourth for a long time, but now he's going to have to play defense. Here comes Billy Smith, who's boxed in by the lap traffic. David Perry, unfortunately, at the wrong place and the wrong time for him. I am honestly astonished that Bennett saved that car. The Porsche, when it starts to spin, is usually not easy to catch. And on top of that, at No Name Corner, where usually if you lose the car, it's gone.
5,000%, just absolutely driver in perfect sync with his machinery there. He was able to catch it. Almost looked like he was driving a dirt car coming around that corner, just putting in the right amount of throttle and lift to be able to keep it into an almost controlled spin.
Oh, we got to go back to our LMP2's Billy Smith. Got a great run on Williams as he got balked by traffic. Both of them have to slow up now. And here comes De Vries looking for a 2-for-1, but there's not enough width that he feels safe. He backs out of it, stays in fourth, still side by side, almost contact between Smith and Williams. Williams retains second. Can De Vries manage to capitalize on that, take third away? No. Defensive move from Billy Smith down into Ravage. This is frantic fighting to decide the bottom 2 steps of the podium in our LMP2 class.
If you want to talk about battles for the podium, let's look back at GT3s, where Joe Stifel got around Santana going into the chicane last lap. 2 laps in a row, Stifel picked up 8/10 on Santana. Finally got the move done in the chicane. Now Stifel is sitting in third place here in GT3s.
Not often we see someone have the measure of Kevin Santana. He's been very quick, especially this season. But the 003 has already bumped him off the podium and is pulling away ever so slightly. It's 7/10 between them.
Yeah, just the way that Stifel's been gaining lap after lap on him, I wouldn't be surprised to see him pull away. It's going to maybe come down to tires because Stifle was really pushing hard in the draft of Santana trying to catch up to him, as now they have to deal with some traffic lapping them with the LMPs.
Yeah, that's our leader in the LMP2s. Paul Darling gets by. Thankfully, not really too much of an issue, it seems, for Kevin Santana, and Joe Stifle did separate them a little bit. It's up to 1.1 seconds now. Watching them out of La Source and down the hill. Stifle continuing to hold Kevin Santana at bay. So that one has unfortunately died down. Let's look back at a recovering driver in the GT Pros. Young Park is back up to 7th, and he's got Jimbo Pfeiffer right in front of him.
There you see Park in that black and green Porsche. Much more what I expect out of Young Park. As I said, normally a calm, cool, and collected driver, making a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes on that opening lap. But now as he starts to line in on Jimbo Pfeiffer, you see so much better on the brakes there than Jimbo. Really able to get it down. Now he's going to put the power down here. This is certainly close enough to take massive advantage of the draft. He's just got to try to keep his right foot in it as much as possible as he makes his way up Eau Rouge.
Porsche versus Porsche. The double out of Jimbo Pfeiffer comes off of Radion. Can't help but give the toe to the car behind. We had a car off. That was Jared Eaton. That was a lapped car that they just went by. So we'll try and check on that later. Young Park, as he reels him in, runs out of straightaway, breaking into Lacombe. But it's not over. He can continue to chip away at that 6th place.
You know, Joe, riding on board very quickly with Young Park like that, I'm starting to wonder if this is a setup game. You saw how much he was able to close up behind Jimbo there in the braking zone, and I really and truly think that he's running a heavy setup.
Sorry, Joey Trungell in the GT3s has had a problem. What has happened here? Oh, I think he's wrecked. If we can get a replay of the last 30 or 40 seconds, he's taken a big hit.
Yeah, he had contact, it looks like maybe from the 82 to got it a little deep. We'll take a look.
So this is going to happen out of Pujon. Looks like, yeah, he's coming through No Name right here, down the hill. So next corner, you're going to see the car start to get loose. The Ferrari just starts to see the rear want to swap ends, and the car is going so fast. Here it is right here. Oh, he hit a bump.
Yeah, that curbing really upset the front of his car. He's lost his hood. He's got some suspension damage as well. We'll have to see how much that impacts his race. Already 2 cars out of the GT3 class, as well as Shane Hunter back on track, but he is 8 laps down.
So that promotes David Sockrider up to 5th now that Trungale has had to give up those spots, and Trungale is into pit lane, as we can see. Meanwhile, coming up to De Vries, a 10th between himself and David Williams as they head into Rivage themselves. And on top of it, they've got to deal with the traffic. Billy Smith is probably loving this battle as he's already gapped them to about 1.8 seconds.
He has, but Joe, I have to say the driver I am most impressed with in this LMP class right now is David Williams. He is driving with every bit of his head, and really and truly, that is what separates a good racing driver from a great racing driver. Good racing drivers drive with their feet. Great racing drivers drive with their head. Williams has been using picks over the course of the race to get ahead when he needs to. He doesn't look like he is in a overly in a massive hurry to get past De Vries here. He's doing it when he sees an opportunity. He's happy to hold back and fuel save a little bit if he needs to, and that is a good way to get your car onto the podium.
I think we just had our first taker in the prototypes for a scheduled stop, Mike Major. There you can see the number 2 on the lane, but we need to go back to DeVries because I think David Williams is going to have a go at him. In fact, he does. Manages to get side by side down into the bus stop, almost gets shoved off the track though, and there goes DeVries the other way as he unfortunately finds himself without as much apex as he thought he'd have. He'll still get a good exit, and it's a drag race up to the hairpin of La Source. Is behind them. Josh Wolf is eating popcorn and watching to see if he can try and take advantage off the hairpin. A better exit for David Williams. He's going to hold ahead of DeVries, but it's all going to erupt all over again up the Kemmel Straight.
This is gonna be fun. Here comes the great shot. 1, 2, 3, there they go. That is Williams, DeVries, and Wolf, all in a straight line. DeVries the first to make the move out. Wolf is gonna tuck up behind him, braying on it. There's lapped cars getting in the way, but there they go!
Thought better of it. DeVries up to the apex. He's going to take it away from Williams this time. DeVries in 3rd, Williams 4th, Wolf in 5th. And Joey Atterbury was watching that whole thing from the lead of the GT Am class, praying, please don't wreck in front of me, guys.
It is the constant prayer of the GT3 driver of please just let me drive my race. I just want to drive. But look at that run out of No Name there that Williams gets. He's going to try to look to the inside, the outside of Pujol. Thinks better of it. Slots back into line. More GT3 traffic there. Going off wide, staying out of the way. Williams taking a wider line off of there. Going to dive. That's the outside for this setup. Is he going to actually try to make the move? He is. Can he hold it into the left-hander?
Yes, he can. A power move from David Williams. He is not letting anything stop him today, but them going back and forth like that means that Billy Smith is now 4.5 seconds ahead of this trio. The bad news for Billy Smith is that while he is leaving them behind because of all that fighting, he's not making inroads on Paul Darling. It's 10 seconds from P1 to P2. Oh, here we go again.
Yep, what is DeVries rather going to do here? Doesn't get it done, but Paul Darling in the pits, Joe, as are all 3 of these guys.
All right, so it looks like that's the end of the pit window, potentially. Robert Tinsey in as well, Luke Carbonneau, Leif Peterson. Yep, I think this is the absolute limit for the fuel tanks. And remember, they have to go all the way around, down the hill to the front of the pit lane, past where the start line is. As who is that we see taking repairs? Is that Eaton? Yeah, that's Jared Eaton.
Not sure exactly what happened to him, but Joe, this is where this is going to get interesting. I mentioned it at the top of the race. The pit exit dumps you out at the top of Radion, and what that means is you get out of the pits and you immediately get into a draft battle. And so that's going to be really interesting to see what these guys are going to do. Not going to be taking tires on this stint necessarily, but the tires will be a little bit cooler by sitting in the pit stationary for a while.
Already Paul Darling is taking his service. These cars do take a bit of time, surprising amount of time for their level of racing to refuel and get all the service done. But I can tell you that everybody is in except for Major and Wilson, who have pitted prior. Now, I think Wilson does still need a scheduled stop because he was 10 laps ago, so he'll probably have to do a 3-stopper, unfortunately.
We are starting to see pit stops here in GT3s with the 44 of David Sockrider coming down the pit lane. He is running 5th in class at the moment when he came down pit road, but all these guys are going to start coming 1 lap at a time with Atterbury still out front.
What's happening in the battle between DeVries and Williams? Oh my goodness. DeVries 7 seconds quicker in his pit stop compared to David Williams. Maybe David taking a slightly longer stop for fuel this time compared to everybody else, because that's certainly not tires.
No, it's not. There's the pit comparison. You can see about a 7-second difference. Joe, I have to say, Billy Smith and Jason DeVries, they were both stationary in their box for about 24 or so seconds. Everybody else in the pits averaging out to about a 30-second pit stop. So I think they may be looking at an understint.
Sheldon Rosenbaum. Oh, a big wreck, and he's had to tow. This just happened to the 113 coming out of Malmedy. Oh, no. He was having a decent day going. And this Corvette is going to see it unravel very quickly. Here it comes right here. He goes wide off the corner, tries to keep his foot in it, and pays dearly.
And Joe, you were mentioning how tricky it is sometimes with that Porsche when it gets into a tank slapper. The Corvette, very, very similar. It is a really fun car, very pointy front end. You can really get it to bite into the corner well. But the only caveat is that it is a very, very twitchy car. We talk about it being twitchy under braking. It's also twitchy under acceleration. You've got to get the power on just right. And right there, clearly not happening for Rosenbaum.
So we come back live. Right now, the battle seems to be for second place. Bennett, after his save, is stuck behind Binkley and watching Booth scatter off into the distance.
Yeah, David Booth just really, or Ross Booth rather, excuse me. Sorry, Ross. Really running away with it. He's got about a gap of 2.5 seconds, but Bennett just holding up close behind Binkley here, really trying to pressure the Corvette driver as much as possible. He's not able to fully close the gap down. He's not really able to get up there, but he's doing well.
Ooh, and looks like we've got a pitter. And our GT Pros, this is Slavonic. Finds his pit stall behind him. That appears to be Dornenberg as well, coming in the 913. Jeffrey, Duprat, Pies, and maybe Pfeiffer. Also pitting. No, Pfeiffer's not in yet.
Yeah, so everybody coming in, these pit stops working out to about where we think they would. All cars in all classes we're estimating are gonna have to do 2 stops. The only exception maybe being the GT3. You can get away with it if you are very soft on the accelerator.
Slavonic out and running. Still waiting on about half of our GT Pro field to come in. Booth, Binkley, Bennett, Park, Islam, and Intilli have not come in. And boy, I know it always feels so narrow coming out of that pit exit, and that certainly doesn't help going 3 wide. That was Joey Trungale and the GT Ams going by.
Yeah, that'll certainly put your heart in your mouth there. 3 different classes all trying to go there for the same position as we get some good side-by-side battling here.
Remember, Trungale is not in the same class, so he's just trying to stay out of the way and run his own race. Meanwhile, Booth has hit the lane. Binkley has. Bennett has. Park's a long ways back. My goodness, Park is 30-some-odd seconds, and Park is slow. Oh, did Park run out of fuel? I think young Park's day has gotten all the worse.
And we are seeing pit stops from the leaders in GT3 with both Atterbury and Robertson taking the pit lane. Santana stays out, it looks like, for 1 more lap.
We ride on board with young Park. Is he going to make it? Oh, man, he started sputtering a long ways ago.
And Joe, you see when he got down to that pit speed limit just how much momentum it cost him to get on the brakes. You can almost see, yeah, you can see it on that onboard, just the jerking of the car. He is out, but he is just barely, I think, gonna try to make it. I don't think he's got it.
Maybe up here. No, well, he's having to let people go. That's what's going on. Mo Islam overtakes him in pit lane.
He's burping the throttle here, trying to get anything he can out of it. There is a little bit of downhill here, though, so that's going to help him.
I was just going to say, he's got it from here. The car will at least coast to it, even if it's slow.
Loads of pit stops in GT3. Atterbury stopped, as I mentioned. Robertson as well. Robertson with a 1.1 second advantage on his stop. The only 2 drivers that have not stopped in GT3s, Kevin Santana and Dale Green in the 250. They're going to stretch it for 1 more lap.
Santana making good on that light right foot that we heard DJ talking about. Park did hit his pit stall and can at least get some fuel in it. Probably taking notes on what not to do next time. Do have a good battle in the mid-pack for the LMP2s. Leif Peterson and Luke Carbonneau are fighting for 8th position. Both of them have made their first stop, so this is not based on strategy. This is legitimate.
It is. These guys have been relatively close for most of the battle. We saw that, or most of the race, we saw them get a little close to that Tinsey Wolf battle early on, but they've obviously fallen back. Carter Cuttinger able to get his nose in there instead. But as you watch here, good braking there from Carbonneau, able to really close up through the bus stop. He is going to be close enough to take massive advantage of the draft, should he be able to.
Let's see. Remember, he's got to get a good exit here and then also withstand the dirty air through Eau Rouge and Radillon. Plus, I see a little bit of traffic in front of him. It's Luke Schmidt in an Audi in the GT Am class. Oh, they're going to catch him at a weird spot. At a very weird spot. Can he get around? Just manages to dodge to the side in time. Leif Peterson not going to be held up, and Luke Carbonneau won't get the tow he wants.
No, he won't. You saw him trying to get around there as quick as possible, but not working out for either of those LMP2 drivers there. Peterson losing about a tenth in getting around him, having to lift ever so slightly at the top of Radillon. But Carbonneau now really starting to try to put some pressure on here, seeing what he can do. This middle sector, not a place to overtake, but a place to put in pressure and try to force a mistake.
While we wait for him to catch up to the back of the 39, Chad, I just noticed, is Kevin Santana still going around?
Dale Green came into pit from second, but Kevin Santana going out for one more lap. You mentioned Featherfoot. My goodness, he is featherfooting it if he still has enough for another lap.
The only car to get to lap 19 of the GT Am class, Kevin Santana. Let's hope he didn't make a mistake as he lets the LMP2 of Bradley Haley sneak by the inside of Pouan.
Well, and Joe, I can report that we also had one super late stopper in the GTEs, and that was Eric Antilli was able to stretch out one lap over the leaders. He is just now coming out of the pits, and so he was able to go, but ran into the same problem that Young Park did, was sputtering coming through the pits.
Santana must be very low riding on board, listening to his throttle. He is very light-footed coming down the back section of this course, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can make it coming to the last final corners.
Right on board now. Did he push it that much too far? Through Blanchimont, and then he's got to brake for the bus stop. Then he hits that pit entry.
I think he might have done it.
Looks like he'll at least get there.
What?
Oh.
Another one?
Wait a minute. Okay, oh my goodness. I'm trying to figure out, maybe everybody else just pitted earlier, not stretching it to the limit. This is just very strange that only one car going on this strategy.
And he's got, it looks like a huge advantage out the back. Trying to figure out who is second in class right now because they're still shuffling through these pit stops. Yeah, Atterbury got by Green.
Yeah, Atterbury re-inherits the lead. Remember, he took that top spot at the start of this race, so he's back to where he was before the pit stops. And his 34-second gap is mainly because we're waiting on Kevin Santana to come in. I was almost wondering if he had pitted and we just didn't see it on our timing and scoring, but no, I mean, the gap between them implies that he is still going. Now, actually, we're past halfway. Kevin Santana is one stopping this thing.
I was about to say that might be what he's trying to do. Everybody else making it a two-stop, but if he can stretch us another lap or so, actually from here, he can make it the rest of the way.
Well, what's wild is he would have been able to make it if he pitted this lap. It would have been 45 minutes. He easily would have gone through. So he's taken this to extremes and given himself some leeway.
I don't know who his chief mechanic is who comes up with these strategies, but oh my goodness, what a move this could be, making it a one-stop.
Well, with that happening, our closest battle currently on track is actually for second in the GT Pros. That's between Binkley and Bennett still. Brian has been stuck behind Kevin since the start of this race. And Binkley, who is notched up a second, a third, and a third, is looking for another silver medal here today with the way things are going.
He is, Joe, but he is not that far back of your class leader, Ross Booth, however. Booth is only about 1.6 seconds up the road of Kevin Binkley. So I think if Binkley plays his cards right, you know, currently in the middle of this Porsche sandwich, he may be able to make a few things work out in his favor. Now that 1.6, 1.7 mark is important. We always talk about draft when you get these cars up to full speed. Draft starts to take effect at about 1.7, 1.8 seconds. So Binkley will be able to get just a little bit of a toe from Ross Booth in front of him.
Santana is in. Atterbury going to get the lead back, but making this a one-stop is going to be very interesting for Kevin Santana. It's a long pit road, but he seems to have plenty of fuel. The one thing to note, though, is that even though Santana will save some time skipping a stop, his fastest lap compared to Joey Atterbury, over a second and a half slower so far in the race.
I have to attribute to that fuel saving he was doing.
And he is burping the throttle coming to his pit stall, but he does get there safely.
Now another driver pulling an interesting strategy. Everybody else about 30 seconds on their pit stops. David Sockrider, who's currently fourth, had a 20-second stop. So playing, I wonder if he took his short stop this time and then is going to take a long stop next time, hoping for track position. There he is on screen. Oh, and a car cuts across. That was Mo Islam and the GT Pros just missing his braking down into the bus stop chicane. Just getting out of the way, make sure he can serve his penalty cleanly.
And under 30 seconds on the stop for Santana, losing about 0.8 of a second to Atterbury on the stop alone, but he's back underway and he's going to try to stretch it to the end from here.
Now, Sockrider's coming up behind him, but remember, Sockrider had a much shorter stop than Santana. That's why he's gaining some time. He's going through Eau Rouge, and Santana just came off the top of the hill. And that's Trungale in front of them. He's laps down, so this is not for position. Oh, whoa! Whoa, what was going on there? Mo Islam very slow. Everybody makes it out the other side. Sockrider within the toe of Kevin Santana, but not overtaking him.
Joe, I'm trying to check back and see what happened to Mo Islam there, because it looked like, frankly, he was just absolutely stopped.
Maybe still serving that slowdown penalty? I don't know. That's very unusual.
It really is. I don't know if I have a definitive answer. The only thing I can think of is his rear wing does appear to have a little bit of damage on it, so he may have caught something.
Let me see. Let me double check to see if he ran into anything. Maybe he took a spin. No, not seeing that. Huh. So, Mo Islam, who is down in 11th, is having all sorts of struggles that were just having a little bit of a mystery on. So he's now in a bunch of traffic that stifle Sockrider, Santana. That's all for position. Essentially the battle for third in the GT Am class, but all three drivers are all on different strategies amongst these three.
Yeah, it's not often that we see a real variance of pit strategy in some of these multi-class races, especially with something as short as a pseudo-endurance at 1.5 hours, Joe. But really and truly, strategy coming to the fore here today at Spa, and it's making for an absolutely fantastic experience.
And Mo Islam just stuck in the middle of this group. You see the LMP in the number 2 of Mike Major on the outside there. But Mo Islam been stuck with this group for about the last 6 or 7 corners and just trying to find a way through. Cannot do so. It looks like his straight line speed might be compromised because he cannot get by Santana right now.
When Stifel's trying to get by Sockrider, this is going to be for 4th place in the GT AMs. He got close up to La Source, couldn't make the pass stick. Mo Islam finally going to leave them be using the extra speed in that GT Pro car as he gets by Santana.
And Santana pushing really hard as he enters a Rouge right there. Clipped a lot of the grass, and he needs to start being careful about some of these off tracks.
Here goes Stifle. Trying to use the toe of Bradley Haley as he went by. Eric Antilli and his GT Pro Porsche approaching the back of them, but they're going to go too wide. Stifle tries to brake late, but it's not late enough. Sockrider retains P4.
Such a fun battle. All three cars right here for the last step of the podium. Meanwhile, Atterbury with a 20-second lead over Robertson, and then a 44-second lead, it looks like, over Santana.
Yeah, Atterbury is way ahead, but by our calculation, Santana doesn't have to stop a second time. 44 seconds, that's going to be close. That's actually a big toss-up, I'd say, on which is quicker, a 2 or a 1.
Yeah, it also can come down to how much fuel saving you have to do. With the fact that he went 2 laps over halfway, Santana did, he can push a little bit harder this second stint and not have to give up as much time on track.
That's a good point. And it covers himself off if we get an extra lap that he didn't account for.
Yeah, Santana is the current leader in the GT and standings for Lap Rats Racing, and you know what? If he's making strategy calls like this all season, he deserves to be at the top of the team standings.
Yeah, he's got 2 wins. In fact, the only, actually, let me double check this stat before I say it. Yeah, the only driver of our championship leaders in the 3 classes that has taken multiple wins so far this season. The other 2 do not have multiple wins on the cards. So we watch our prototype come through here.
And I think that's a good sign for the series. You know, if you have that many drivers winning that many races, so evenly balanced, so competitive, it makes for a great series and a great season.
Let's check in on our leaders on the other classes while we've got a chance, starting with our prototypes. Paul Darling is 3.7 seconds ahead of Billy Smith. Now, Smith was 5 seconds quicker in the pit stop, and that would explain at least 5 of the seconds that he's made up, because it was about 8 or 9. But the rest of it, I think, is he's been mildly faster than Paul Darling in this second stint, so he could continue chipping away and try and challenge him. Meanwhile, down in the GT Pros, it is still Ross Booth in front of Kevin Binkley, who keeps holding back Brian Bennett, who has dropped away. Booth at about 1.5 seconds ahead from the number 75. So not entirely comfortable, but at least far enough away that he's not getting attacked every corner.
And by the way, Robertson in second place, 18 seconds behind Atterbury in the GT3 class, gained almost 2 seconds last lap, so he's charging hard for that top spot.
Wonder how much of that is the actual pace and how much of it is lap traffic. I do know, actually, I believe I saw at one point Joey Atterbury cut the course at Radion. I didn't say anything because we had a lot of other action happening at the time. So I think the 51, maybe that explains the 3 seconds that he lost on that lap. Atterbury following behind Jimbo Pfeiffer in his GT Pro car around La Source. Still sitting pretty right now, but how much is he aware? Because he doesn't necessarily know that Kevin Santana has run that long. He might have been focusing on other things.
Yeah, and speaking of Santana, he's under a lot of pressure right now from Soccer out of that 44 that we were talking about earlier.
Those prototypes, sorry to interrupt, those prototypes are for position. That's Peterson and Carbonneau side by side coming up to Lacombe. Carbonneau on the outside in the blue and white car. Is he going to seal the deal? It's almost there. Tries to chop him off at Malbany, and he does it. That will net him 8th place.
And I've been keeping an eye on that one, Joe. Carbonneau has just been silently stalking behind Leif Peterson, but now they're going to come up behind Jimbo Pfeiffer. That's going to slow up Carbonneau a whole bunch as they go through that no-name corner. And there you see Peterson tried to get a better run, not able to do it. Pfeiffer staying out of the way for him, not going to be able to make the move through Poohall, but now they come up on, that was Sherburne, and I don't know how Carbonneau avoided an accident there, but able to stay ahead of Peterson as well. So Carbonneau fully up into that 8th spot.
Having to make some exciting moves to get there. Credit to the 492 for that one. We're closing in on the pit window for the second time now. The final stop for everybody, as we're just about 30 minutes to go. Let's check out the battle for third. Yeah, right here with you, Chad.
This is Santana still leading this pack, but they're getting interrupted by some LMP traffic. Sockrider and Stifle, they're battling. It looks like the traffic that they're having to deal with, not able to get by cleanly through the corners, opening up the gaps just a little bit. You could throw these cars under a blanket about 5 seconds or 5 corners ago, and now all of a sudden it's going to be Santana with a decent about 5 or 6 car length lead to Sockrider running 4th in the class.
Great stuff for Sockrider in today's race. Still hoping, I'm sure, for one better and managing to get onto the podium. Could still catch up to Santana. Ooh, and Santana not looking too strong off of Stavolo. Here comes Sockrider getting a great tow. Is this the fuel saving still for Kevin Santana? Is he just slow on pace? It might be.
He does still have 5 more laps worth of fuel. That extra weight might be killing his straight line just a little bit, but he is able to hold that 3rd spot over Sockrider.
Breaking down into the bus stop. Sockrider is actually still looking for, I think, a top 10 even potentially. I'm trying to see what his last finishes were. He missed the first round. Got 6 points at Sebring and 7 at Le Mans. Out of the source one more time. Not able to close in that time through. Kevin Santana, maybe he's starting to speed up a little bit with him being under threat from David Sockrider.
We see that gap starting to stretch out just a little bit. 2/10 the advantage that lap Santana over Sockrider. And Joe Seil running 5th in class right there behind Sockrider. He was able to gain those 2/10 back on Sockrider.
Stifle, though, decides not even to show his nose, so he feels content. Oh, but he still scares Sockrider off the racing line, misses his apex. Can he go for the over-under? He thinks about it, but he can't quite get it in there. So Sockrider will retain 4th, but all that he had gained on Santana gets washed away.
Stifle being very aggressive there in the 5th spot. He is the top running Ferrari in the GT3 class.
Back down out of Speaker's Corner. And David Sockrider has got to regain some time if he wants to get into the top 3. And here we go, ticking down to that 30-minute mark as well. We are solidly within the ability for everybody to stop, including, I believe, Major is in. Yes, in our prototypes, the first taker last time is the first taker this time.
Not really too much of a surprise on that one, Joe, as we see him make his way down this long pit lane here. The thing to keep in mind as he goes down the hill towards that, obviously most of the GTEs and all of the LMP2s have to use the second part of this pit lane, so that is a disadvantage to them for anybody that's trying to fuel save. Obviously you'll be able to get in and get out a little bit faster if you're in that first section. But Major the first to go here, based off of what we saw last time. I would expect to see the rest of these drivers in within the next 10 minutes or so.
Major finds his spot and starts his service to take him to the finish of today's race, round 4 of the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge. Let's go back to that battle for 3rd, though. Sockrider peels away some of the time that Santana had gained and has got it back down to 0.6 of a second, but he is definitely towing along Joe Stifle. If those two fight, then it really will slip through his fingers once again, and I'm sure Kevin Santana is watching his mirrors and hoping those two start to go side by side. Great run here, Chad, as Joe Stifle might have a good opportunity.
And they're going to have to deal with more LMP traffic coming down this long straightaway. You see the 155 of Darling. That's the overall leader right now. He gets by them nice and clean. 2 more behind, but it's going to be Stifle on the inside. Cannot get clear, and coming back on the outside trying to hold that position is Sockrider.
And this is a battle for position behind them, I think, isn't it? No, it's not. That's Major, and that's Billy Smith. They're on different laps, but they're definitely being held up.
And Major on cold tires just coming out of the pit lane behind these guys as well.
That did not work out well for Billy Smith. as he tries to catch up to Paul Darling. Remember, he was chopping that down to under 3 seconds. It's gone back up to 4 seconds to our overall leader now.
It really is, Joe, and I have to say credit there to Paul Darling. You saw the way he sliced and diced through those GT3s. Very, very heads up to him on that, as now he works his way out of that tricky Sector 2. That gap currently sitting at 5 seconds. 5.1 seconds back to Billy Smith.
And by the way, that battle for third that we were talking about in LMP or in the GT3s, Santana just said thank you very much to all that lap traffic. His gap behind now is over 1.5 seconds.
Everything's spread it apart there, but not with Booth and Binkley for the lead in our GT Pros. Binkley is now all over the back of that 03, which is kind of surprising. And I'm not seeing it. In fact, their pit times are almost identical from what I can see. So Kevin Binkley has just turned up the wick and run down Ross Booth.
That's exactly what it was, Joe. Binkley has just had the power put into his right foot. He is going for broke here, trying to chase down Booth. Booth catching some disadvantageous lap traffic here and there. And now it's going to be Binkley's time to catch it, caught up behind Dale Green there as Leif Peterson in the LMP2 cuts off a little bit of his escape as well. But that gap still holding at about 0.7 seconds. You see him get back onto the preferred racing line there. Does Binkley, getting ready to try to take advantage of the draft of Booth down towards the Kemmel Straight.
As that happened, Billy Smith and Jason DeVries have both pitted in the LMP2 class. We ride on board with Binkley looking up ahead. You can see all the ground that he lost to Ross Booth because of that incident. And yeah, no, this is way too far back. It may be vet versus vet, but I don't think Binkley's going to have a chance.
No, he's not, but he's at least going to be able to draw up a little bit closer at the end of the straightaway. That gap coming down to about 0.4 seconds, so courtesy of the draft, taking 0.2 out of that lead. You can see how much he is closing. I would say watch for him. He may try to make a move going down into bus stop here if he can keep everything nice and tidy through
DeVries has finished his stop. He is back running, and it looks like Billy Smith has as well. About a 3-second gap between those two. They are now good to go to the finish.
Almost some trouble there for the GT3 driver, leader of Joey Atterbury. Got some contact from behind going through the bus stop chicane from Young Park. Able to keep things under his own power and keep things going. And no damage to the back end of that car.
Got the replay. Yeah, Park is, well, excuse the joke. I'm surprised he hasn't parked it by now, the way things have been going. Here it comes into that bus stop chicane. That's parked behind him in the green and black Porsche. Gonna let the LMP2 through as well.
And just this run out of Blanchimont as he runs wide. Incredible to see how much time these GTEs gain.
And it looks like it's a second apex, which is weird.
Exactly, that's what it was.
Not sure. Maybe he was trying to get the run off the corner and anticipated it wrong. Whatever the case, thankfully both are able to keep going, and I'm really seeing minimal damage on both of them. Luke Carbonneau now is our next to pit in the prototypes.
Yeah, Carbonneau going to be popping in, finally giving that 6th place position back to Leif Peterson. So Carbonneau trying to go with a little bit of an undercut here to see what he can do. Peterson now going to try to maximize as Carbonneau was able to get that gap up to about a second or so before he came into the pits.
And Canchin is in. That leaves just David Warner to come around this time, potentially to pit. Otherwise, the top 7 have stayed out as long as possible in our prototype class.
Yeah, everybody wanted to go as long as possible.
Ooh, and is this a pass? Oh, it was awful close. Binkley trying to get into the head of that VRS car.
Yeah, Binkley just showing his nose there. Both of these guys still have to make another stop in this GT Pro class, but Binkley just letting Ross Booth knows that he is there. Now that is Bradley Haley in the LMP2 coming up behind him. You can see in that rearward facing camera screen there, for Kevin Binkley, so he's going to have to watch out for that. Not a great area to get it on the run down to Pujol. He may be able to see if he can slow. Whew, that was awfully close there, and that's going to cost Kevin Binkley just a couple of tenths of a second, having to check up behind the LMP2.
So that LMP2 sandwich got a little spicy for a moment, but Ross Booth is going to hold on the lead. Kevin Binkley still watching, waiting. Is he going to try an attack, or is this the maximum that we're getting out of the 75? Is this as close as he can get?
I think there may be a little bit of fuel saving going on here for Kevin Binkley at this point. He may be trying to see if he can eke out just a lap or two more. He doesn't look like he is really going for broke on these moves, Joe. We still have over 20 minutes to go in this race and a pit stop for both of these leaders. So he doesn't need to make the move here. I think he's just trying to get into the head of Ross Booth.
I'm a little bit surprised at how far most of our LMP2s are able to go. Because as I said, we're missing about half the fields and we've got 20 minutes left. I guess they can tend to go maybe about 35 minutes, so maybe this is just about to the limit of what they can do here in this next minute or so.
One thing to note, by the way, for Atterbury, he's got about a 21-second lead right now in the GT3s. If he starts fuel saving, he might be able to make it. Santana went 2 laps past halfway and was able to basically stretch it to a one-stop. Atterbury, if he got a full tank at his stop, he would be able to go 20 laps, which would put him right at or very close to going on one stop.
Yeah, I'm seeing 3 laps difference between their pit stops. So, I mean, it might be doable. If I was Atterbury, I'm not sure I'd be willing to try and risk it.
With that big of a gap behind, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. He has 25 seconds to second, 55 to Santana, the driver that's trying to pull the one stop.
Well, he stays out this time by. So Atterbury certainly not thinking about it quite yet.
Yeah, and Atterbury and Santana's pit stops basically within a second of each other, so they both probably took about the same amount of fuel on their stops. I don't think it's going to come down to it might come down to fuel, but I don't think that could come into play here. I think Atterbury's going to try to stretch it out.
Leaders are in the prototypes. Darling and Wolf. Williams stays out, though, and Tinsey does too. Some drivers doing a little bit better on that fuel margin. Looks like Wolf is in. Kundinger stays out. Peterson stays out. What about Bradley Haley? Haley is also going to stay out. So it really is a variety of strategies today. We generally don't see them coming in on this many different laps in this series.
No, we certainly don't, and I think part of the reason why that Paul Darling has had to come in is he has been having to run in clean air for the majority of this race, not able to save a single lick of fuel. He has just been out front dominating, and so he hasn't been able to take advantage of any draft fuel saving. That said, some of these guys behind, I'm a little surprised that they're coming in this early. I would have expected maybe one more lap out of them. If they can eke out another one, then I don't know what's going on, Joe.
They always like to make us look like fools when it comes to fuel and strategy here in the booth. We're going to go back to that battle for third, though, and actually is Stifle able to get to the inside? He's got his nose in there, wheel to wheel down into Lacombe, and they still haven't settled it. He carries it on. Stifle now through, but looking for the over-under. Kevin Santana, unfortunately, not able to carry the speed.
Yeah, just slowly closing the gap lap after lap. With Stifle finally able to get that move done. Last time by the line, by the way, Santana lost over a second to Stifle. So that last lap, something must have happened. Maybe deal with lap traffic at the wrong time with Santana, and that allowed Stifle to get by.
That'd be my guess. Santana now having to push a little bit harder, maybe, if he wants his victory. Look at, oh my goodness, it's a traffic jam, and that's our leaders and the GT Pros. With Binkley, did Binkley overtake Booth?
He did, Joe. And literally, as that exact battle with the GT3s was happening, you could kind of see it out of the back of your screen. Binkley able to get by Booth, as that is DeVries in the middle of this absolutely mega kerfluffle as they go down.
And DeVries is the teammate of Booth, too, so he doesn't want to hold him up, but he's got his own race to run. They go by Joe Stifle, let him be, and finally it sorts itself out. But Kevin Binkley, what a wise head on those shoulders. He's 7/10 ahead, and for the first time this race is leading the way.
Yeah, he put in a really good run, just very, very patient, waiting to go in, and was able to make the move going into Lacombe. Finally get that Corvette by as they work their way through the bus stop chicane.
Booth, the biggest loser there. Stifle, the biggest winner, I guess you could say, trying to take advantage. He gets by Santana, and now he has a car in between, kind of trying to pad things out and try to pull away.
You see a bunch of our prototypes also pitting. Darling has been in and out. Looks like Billy Smith is going to inherit second place. He's already taken his stop a couple laps ago. DeVries into third, and Williams into fourth. Wolf just finished his stop. He is up to P5, and Tinsey, who we saw on the lane, is going to return in sixth position.
Yeah, so not really sorting out into a lot of crazy battles there for the LMP2, but we got somebody else in the pits.
Let's see, this is Pfeiffer, I think. Yeah, that's Jimbo Pfeiffer.
That is the first of our GTEs to make his way into pit lane. So there you see Jimbo having to go around the corner, as will all of our GTE cars. He is the first to kick it off. Jimbo now working his way in. I expect to see most of the LMPs within the next lap or so.
And Kevin Binkley, who is up at the front of them, is still going. He didn't come in that time through. There he is on screen. Still has that consistent 7/10 gap over Ross Booth.
I've got smoke pouring out of my abacus over here, guys. Santana, his first stint, he ran 20 laps. If this race, based on my calculations, it's going to have to take Atterbury at least that many, if not 21 laps on fuel to make it to the end on his current stint. So he's really going to have to start stretching things out now if he wants to make it to the end.
If it's a wooden abacus, I could understand. I hope you're not working with a plastic one. Just don't inhale. Meanwhile, as we hop on board and watch down towards Poulon from Dornenberg, looking back at Jeffrey. These two have actually been battling a fair bit in this race. We just haven't been able to go to it.
No, they haven't. We've had great battles up and down the field. This is the first time we're getting eyes on us. There goes Dornenberg down the inside. That's a very gutsy move. Now goes for the over-under, but has to check up ever so slightly there. Not able to get that pass working through those corners, but now they put their way onto Stavalo, and let's see if he can have a run through Blanchemont into the bus stop.
Dornenberg trying to defend on Jeffrey, but he gets a great run. Porsche versus Porsche. And behind them, that is Mo Islam, so that's not for position that you can see in the rear screen. Jeffrey's looking good. Whoa, he goes way off the track, carrying his speed, and Mo Islam wrecks behind them. Defensive move from Dornenberg, managing to keep Jeffrey back at bay, but both of them pit at the same time. Oh, and Jeffrey Dornenberg rather, nearly runs into the wall on the entry.
It is such a tricky pit entry here, Joe. Coming in like that, it is very, very tight, very, very easy to hit the wall. But massive kudos to Jeffrey there. You saw what he was trying to do around Blanchemont, looking for that clean air, looking for any bit of downforce that could give him some max speed as they go in. As there goes Jeffrey, weaving a little bit. I don't know if that's a head game or if he's a little bit out of fuel.
Was he flashing his lights as well? Was I seeing correctly?
He was.
It is very bizarre. Remember, our only other driver to have pitted in that class is Jimbo Pfeiffer, who's still coming up to the bus stop right now. They managed to get towards their pit stalls here and get their service done. Oh man, it's always annoying to have to go through those cars and hope that you've spotted your lollipop man accurately.
It is. It's very, very tricky.
That was a very fast stop for Dornenberg. My goodness.
It was indeed. Dornenberg only
9
stationary for
seconds.
9 seconds. That, I don't know if that's going to be able to work there for him, Joe.
Yeah, for comparison for our viewers, Jeffrey was in for 12 seconds. Pfeiffer was in for 18. Ross Booth is now in from second place.
Well, let's keep an eye and see what Booth does here on that pit stop. If there's something we're not seeing from Dornenberg, if he thinks he can make it on that 9-second stop, but Joe, I don't think he can.
Yeah, that seems a little too extreme to me, but we've been fooled other times by how the cars operate and what they do for the fuel. We're now down to 12 minutes. Come back to the 913, still out on track. That's Dornenberg, freshly out from his stop. It netted him about 3 seconds over Stefan Jeffrey on the track currently. So if he wanted the track position, he's got it. But now he's got to try and stretch the fuel to the end.
Yeah, and that's going to be the real problem. He may save a couple of seconds in the pit stop, but if he's got to be lifting and coasting through the majority of these corners, but Booth does it as well. Booth in with an 8-second stop, so maybe Dornenberg and Booth know something we don't.
Could it be that Jeffrey simply played it a little bit too safe? Got a few more down the lane from the GT Pro. Slavonic, Pies, Duprat, all getting ready to take service.
There you see them waiting. About 9.8 for Slavonic. So if Booth and Dornenberg are right that's that quick of a stop at about that 8 to 8.5 seconds, maybe just a little bit more of a safety cushion for Paul Slavonic. But I gotta think that this is not an anomaly, Joe. These guys can think they can make it on that quick of a splash and dash.
I'm also watching those GT AM cars to see if anybody comes in. So far, no one. Adalberti kept going. Robertson is continuing on past the entry. Stifel's next. They're so far apart. I'm still waiting for the third place car to get there.
And by the way, talking about these GTM cars, looking at the points battle of your top 5, only 2 of the drivers in your top 5 coming into today's race, Santana and Adalberti, looking to have strong showing in the points this week.
Yeah, that'll help the lack of attendance, at least for the time being. They do have drop weeks in this series, so those drivers who miss out will be able to come back and get involved as long as they don't have too bad of races when they do show up. Now down to 10 minutes left to go. How about Paul Darling, now up to 11 seconds ahead of Billy Smith. Darling is just dominating this field, and if he manages to win this, he'll be the first of our prototype drivers to take 2 wins this season.
He will, as you see him there working his way around, doing a very good job to just keep this all under control. And if I'm one of these other LMP2 drivers, I have got to be absolutely petrified. Paul Darling looking absolutely untouchable here at Spa. In any of these longer races that we go to, I've got to be very, very frightened of that red, black, and yellow car.
Binkley has pitted. He's coming back out. It's going to be very close between himself and Booth. And Binkley was about the same on pit stop time on top of it. Better speed to the 03 of Ross Booth as he reels in Kevin Binkley. Can he manage to overtake him here before he gets to the end? Binkley's going to defend down to the inside, and he's saved by the bell. But look at this. The battle is on to the checkered flag.
And Adalberti coming in from the GT3 lead, by the way. We're going to have to see where this slots out. It's going to have to be a short stop, but he comes into pit. He's going to take fuel only, and we'll see where he slots out.
Santana, for reference, is just going through Fanyes right now. That is a long ways back. And yeah, it's going to be a very, very short stop here, but he's got to keep going a long ways down this pit lane before he gets past the pit limiter. In fact, he's still going to try and reach his stall here as he goes around the corner, and eventually will get there. Looks like Brian Bennett is relinquishing the lead in the GT Pros. That'll allow Kevin Binkley to retake that.
And keeping an eye on Santana, by the way, he has gotten past Stifle for third in class, so he's picked up one position on this last.
And something's going on with David Williams here. Let's take a look at the replay. Oh, I think this was a mistake that he has done all on his own. This is out of Lacombe. Yeah, just clips the curb, tries to save it. Does he back it into the wall? He does. Oh, no.
And Joe, that was all set up by the exit of that first part of Lacombe. These LMP2 cars really do not like curbs. Very, very stiff suspension to try to get a maximum amount of grip.
Let's go to Joey Atterbury. Kevin Santana is approaching. Atterbury is just out of pit lane, but does Kevin Santana have enough pace down the stretch? Or did Kevin just get a slowdown? I think Kevin must have just got a slowdown. Oh no! Right as he was approaching, he could see Atterbury exiting. And a critical mistake could have just cost him a chance at the lead.
I think Santana was too far back, pushing way too hard there, getting into Erosion. Oh my goodness, I mean, that's a critical mistake. He could have at least been in slipstream range, but unfortunately it looks like Santana is not going to be able to get anything done. Robertson looks like came to the pits as well, and he's going to slide out third.
Yeah, the gap is about 5 seconds from Atterbury to Santana after that cut course penalty. Meanwhile, Bennett, who comes back out, now he is not right on top of Booth and Binkley, but he's within a second. So we could have a three-way fight for the victory in our GT Pros, and that is way far ahead of anybody else. Paul Slavonic, 38 seconds behind them.
Joe, these 3B drivers are just in a class of their own tonight, leaving it away. There you see that was Ryan Robertson getting out of the way of Binkley and Booth, but it slowed down Binkley just a little bit. Booth very, very close behind his diffuser, seeing what he can do. Those two Corvettes being stalked by the Porsche of Bennett. Bennett is less than a second back, so we are going to be in Draft City for all three of these when we get to the Kemmel Straight. But before then, Ross Booth has to decide what he wants to do in Blanchimont.
And again, of these three, the only one that has not won yet this season in the GTLMs is Kevin Binkley, who is currently our leader. How hard is he going to defend? Can he defend, especially with a slipstream and moves like that where Ross Booth goes way off track, using up one of his 1Xs, doesn't make the move down into the bus stop. Here comes trouble. It's David Warner, Paul Darling, and Mark Wilson, three of our prototype cars, not fighting for position, mind you, but they've all got to try and weave their way by this battle for P1 in the GT Pros.
And Warner starts to go into the inside. I think that compromised both Booth and Bennett as they came out. You saw Booth getting very wiggly off of the bus stop chicane. Great overhead camera shot. You can see there how close these guys are. Binkley able to pull out a little bit of an advantage, but I think it's going to be Bennett on the back of Booth. This is the move to watch.
Trouble for Santana. He goes right through the chicane coming out of the long straightaway after, and he's going to lose a lot of time to Joey Atterbury. Robertson going to gain as well, but it looks like Santana's going to get things back rolling. What a huge, scary moment for him.
And on screen, that is Booth still ahead of Bennett. He tried to get one in up to Lacombe. It didn't stick. If they keep fighting, Binkley can continue to try and pull away from the pair of them and get himself a much easier and safer victory here today.
Yeah, he's going to be praying for this Bennett and Booth battle to continue. But right now, the gap up to Binkley about 1.4 seconds from Booth to Binkley, so that is not unassailable for Ross Booth. But Brian Bennett very close on his heels, working through the right-left here. He's going to try to get anything done. Jason DeVries and Billy Smith, however, closing down very quickly behind them in the LMP2s.
We're going to watch from Billy Smith's perspective. As he rapidly approaches, this will give us a great idea of just the speed difference between these two classes. They're coming up towards Blanchimont and blinking his lights. There's more traffic in front of them. That was Luke Schmidt. They were trying to get out of the way. Both of them having to go way wide. Ross Booth almost going all the way out to the wall. into the gunk and whatnot, but he retains second place. Things just not going the way of the 03. He can't catch a break in this traffic.
He really can't, Joe, but I'm going to throw something a little crazy out here, and this may be off base, but I think it may be true. If I'm Ross Booth, I'm looking at the amount of incident points that I have and looking at that 36 limit. You can go faster through Blanchimont if you let the car run wide, but you will get it off track. I think there may be a little calculation. 3 laps to go, keep the speed up going into the bus stop chicane.
We'll see if he's got those left over. He's going to give another tow to Bennett. And Brian, who at one point was leading this race, is just trying to salvage a second place here. He outbrakes himself into Lacombe, barely keeps it on the track. And he's going to have to work his way back up to that Corvette all over again.
Yeah, that's going to scupper that battle a little bit in front of them, but the gap now from Booth to Binkley being caught out a little bit by Jason DeVries there, that gap is down to a single second. So maybe now Ross Booth has something for his fellow Corvette driver in Kevin Binkley.
They're going to run out of laps to do it soon, because we're going to get the white flag for Paul Darling next time by the line. Still holding a massive gap over anybody. Billy Smith is 9 seconds back, and it sounds like he just lost a lot of time. He was trying to overtake Jerry Mueller and seems to have been a little bit hot on the radio in the process. There is our overall leader. Keep in mind, your finish line is coming up here and not after La Source. He'll cross it right about now. 155 takes the white flag and looks forward to his second win of the season, potentially.
And here's the leader of your GTEs. They'll be taking the white flag right here. Binkley, Booth, and Bennett. Those gaps, it's under a second now from Booth to Binkley. And Bennett getting caught out a little bit by lap traffic. It's about up to 1.3.
And they've actually got Atterbury very close in front of them. I don't know if they have the pace to catch up to the 51. Not that it'll matter too much, especially since Joey has a big gap over Kevin after his 2 slowdown penalties and is 8 seconds ahead currently of the 666.
Yeah, Santana pushing very hard in the 666, but lost 2 seconds that last lap. And while he's losing time to Atterbury, he thankfully does have about 20 seconds back to Robertson for a third, so he's got a solid foot on that podium.
Battle for the win is still on in the GT Pros. Booth has now regained the gap on Binkley. It's a half a second between them, but passing is going to have to be a Hail Mary here in these last few corners on the second half of the final lap. What is he going to do? There's some more of those off tracks that you heard DJ talking about, trying to use them strategically here. Whatever they've got left.
Joe, if you are Ross Booth right now, you are just pushing as hard as you can. An hour and a half into this race, and the guy you've been chasing is 0.7 of a second in front of you. You got to go for broke. A little bit of slower cars here. Jerry Mueller and Attenbury, like we talked about, that's going to slow everything up just a little bit.
And we got to go to our leader because Paul Darling is coming up to the bus stop. Through the final corner, the first person to take 2 wins in the prototypes this season will be the number 155, and he does it at Spa. Meanwhile, where's Atterbury and Binkley? Binkley just went by him, and he's getting all sorts of flashing from Ross Booth as he chases him down to the bus stop chicane, doing exactly what you talked about, going way wide. Booth trying to use that extra momentum, breaks it very deep, but Binkley's going to defend into the corner. Kevin Binkley trying to get his first win of the season. Can he accelerate out of the bus stop successfully? Yes, the 75 will take the win for the GT Pros as Atterbury crosses right behind them. Victory for him here at Spa.
Absolutely amazing coolness under pressure from Kevin Binkley. He knew that charge was coming from Ross Booth, and he did not blink.
That's going to take us to a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so don't go away. Welcome back to Spa-Francorchamps. Round 4 for the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge was a good one. But up at the front of the LMP2 field, it was Paul Darling taking the win, managing to pull enough of a gap that eventually he could continue to creep away the rest of the race and take that victory. Billy Smith was in a heck of a fight between himself and other cars through much of the race. He wound up in second. It was with him and Jason DeVries who took third, and Josh Wolf who took fourth, along with David Williams, who eventually settled for P5 after a late race mistake cost him positions. Bob the Blade, unfortunately, not the performance we're used to seeing from Robert Tinsey. He finished in 6th with Carter Kundinger. Fantastic job coming up from qualifying, gaining 6 positions, going from 13th to 7th. Leif Peterson took a P8 with Luke Carbonneau in 9th and Bradley Haley in 10th. Then it's Mike Major finishing 11th and Robert Kanchin in 12th. Off the lead lap, it was David Warner in 13th and Mark Wilson in 14th.
In the GTEs, you saw this battle happening all race long. Kevin Binkley able to get his first win of the season, taking it away from Ross Booth and Brian Bennett, all of whom finished within a stone's throw of each other for that podium. Paul Slavinik and Jimbo Pfeiffer rounding out your top 5, with Dominic Donenberg back in 6th place in class. Young Park had some early bobbles, but able to recover to a solid drive in 7th, followed by Christopher Pies, Stefan Jeffrey, Lionel Duprat, and Eric Intilli, rounding out your completing race GTEs.
And Joey Atterbury took the win in the GT3 category. Kevin Santana pulled out that incredible one stop and able to take 2nd in class for that. And then Ryan D. Robinson took 3rd, and Joe Stifel in 4th in class, followed by Dale Green 5th, 30th overall. And back behind him was Matt Owens, David Perry, Sean Reese, the last car on the lead lap in GT3s, followed by David Stockrider and Joey Trungale 1 lap down. And further back in the field, Mo Islam in the GTEs, as well as Chris Sherburne, Luke Schmidt, and Shane Hunter wrapping up the back end of the GT3 class.
It looks like we've got our winner in the GT Pro class as Kevin Binkley finally gets it done. This has been a bit of a long time coming as we pull Kevin in here. And Kevin, a second, a third, and finally a win. Does it feel like this one was overdue from your perspective?
It really does, man. I'm so glad I can get this monkey off my back, man. It was been so close for so many races and competition stiff, but I'm glad I finally got this one out of the way.
How did you manage to withstand the pressure from both Booth and Bennett after that last pit stop? Because surely when that last sequence ended and you saw how close the three of you were, at least be in your mind somewhat.
Yeah, it was. Leaving pit road, I saw Ross just coming up, and I figured if I can at least stay out front, because I have the least amount of downforce I can possibly put on the car. It hurts in the corners, but at least if I can stay out front, I won't be a sitting duck on the straightaway. So I knew if I can get out of Ross, I might hold off for the win. And then, of course, I had to wait for Bennett to pit and see where that put him. And once, we got around him, I knew if I could just hold off, I can win this thing.
So this should actually, let's see. Yeah, this should bump you up ahead of Booth and take the points lead from here. Think you can hold on to it after Imola? That's one that I imagine the pole position going to be extra important at.
It will, and also a big setup change. So far since Daytona, it's all been low downforce. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to have to completely change up our setup. So it'll definitely be interesting.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on you. Again, congratulations on the victory today, Kevin. And here's the best of luck in 2 weeks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Kevin Binkley winning in the GT Pros. As our LMP2 winner, Paul Darling is joining us, and DJ Clark has caught up with him.
Well, Paul, it seemed like a bit of a quiet race, or at least as quiet of a race as a multi-class field like this can be for you. Absolutely dominant performance.
Man, I was really sweating the entire race, so I'm glad it looked like it. I feel like I got pretty lucky with the first pass through the GTs, which built up a bit of a lead, but I was sweating the entire time.
I mean, I can imagine. How difficult is it for you? It's one thing to be passing over the GTEs. There's at least a closer speed comparison, but I think coming up behind those GT3s, just how are you able to quickly judge that speed gap and make sure that there are no mistakes that happen on either side?
I mean, it's really just not sticking your nose where you're going to surprise the GT, and so if that means holding behind some of them where you're going to lose 2 seconds, if it's going to save your car, then sometimes that's what you had to do today. Which is extremely infuriating, but you both end up with a clean car at the end, hopefully. It's just managing that and knowing when to take your risks and when not to.
Well, speaking of risks and trying to keep your nose clean, we head to Imola next. Going to be a little bit more difficult to overtake, whether it's a slower car or a car in your class. How do you think that one's going to go?
Yeah, that was next. That's going to be interesting, especially with the 40 horsepower loss in the latest update. It is much harder to pass those GTEs in the short straights.
It is going to be one to watch for sure. Paul, congratulations again. Anybody you need to thank tonight before we let you go?
I just got to thank my teammate David again for the setup he adapted for us today. We didn't have too much time to work on it, but the damper settings that he had are amazing. So thanks, David.
Well, and congratulations again, Paul. And now Chad has caught up with what was by far one of the most fascinating pit strategies of the race, Kevin Santana.
Yeah, Kevin, we'll have to start off with just a simple one. Was that one stop a move that you guys planned from the beginning? You were the only one in class to take that one stop strategy.
Yeah, I planned that from the start.
Yeah, what gave you the idea to go for that? It was a little bit risky, but it looked like it almost paid off there with Atterbury coming out just a couple seconds in front of you.
If I'd have picked up the pace about 10 laps earlier, I think I'd have had him. I had the fuel to do it.
It looked like you made a mistake coming up through Eau Rouge there, by the way, when you were trying to catch up to him on his outlap. Do you think you could have had a shot at him if you didn't make that mistake?
No, I think he was still at that point. He was still too far up the road. Like I said, if I'd have picked up my pace about 10 laps earlier, I had the fuel to have done that. I failed to, and I think that's what cost me.
I know there's drop weeks in the series, but you and Atterbury, the only two in the top 5 with solid finishes in points. Any goals going? Looking forward to the rest of the season?
Just keep grabbing what I can grab.
And we'll wrap things up here next week. Imola, completely different track than what we've seen from Le Mans and Spa the last 2 races. What's your thoughts on that track?
We'll see what happens there.
All right. Anybody you want to thank as we wrap things up here?
My wife for putting up with me.
Oh, we all have to give a shout out to our wives. Congratulations on a second place finish in class to Kevin Santana. And it looks like, Joe, you've caught up with Joey Atterbury.
Absolutely. Joey, congratulations. Finally taking your first victory of the season here in Autobahn. I have to ask, because I know you've got real world experience with IMSA, even though IMSA doesn't race here. Have you ever got a chance to go and race Spa in real life?
No, not in real life. That's on the bucket list for sure. Just look at that racetrack, the venue that everything is at here. It'd be an amazing track to drive.
No doubt about that. It seems like you got some stiff competition here in the GT AM class, and Kevin almost looked like he gave you a little scared. How aware were you that he was taking an alternate fuel strategy?
Yeah, I mean, so one of my buddies, Trevor McClure, he's spotting for me, and go check him out, Straight Chicane. He's a real world spotter for a bunch of IMSA teams, but I had him keeping an eye on Kevin because I know he likes to stretch fuel, do alternate strategy, and we saw him stretch it out to, I think, lap 20, lap 21, so we knew he was on a one-stop pretty much immediately, and honestly, I was pacing myself from about lap 5. We started just pacing. There's a couple sketchy areas in the GT3 cars that I was afforded to a lift, and just run our race, and it got a little close with Kevin at the end. The rear tires were definitely going off, but I knew I had some pace to burn there.
Now, do you think this will start to open the floodgates for you? Do you see more wins on the horizon?
Oh boy, I hope so. Real world racing picks up here soon, so time commitments are going to be a little bit more slim on the simulator here, but yeah, I plan to keep it up front and show up and do what I can.
Well, we look forward to having more of you on the channel. And again, congratulations on the win today.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Roush Performance Esports over there. We do a bunch of cool stuff over on that channel, as well as all my teammates. Trevor McClure is Straight Chicane Racing, and I got to give a shout out to all the pups here in the sim room here, Jet, Clover, and Noodle. Thank you, guys.
I hope we get to see pictures on social media later because I love dogs. So let's next go to our second place finisher in the GT Pro class. DJ has caught up with Ross Booth.
Ross, absolutely electric battle all the way through that race between you, Kevin, and Brian. You were so close at the end there. That's got to be tantalizing.
Yeah, wow, what a race. Hats off to Binkley. Congrats to him on the race win. Honestly, I think it was between the three of us. Any three of us could have won it, just depended on traffic. Binkley's car was an absolute bullet in a straight line. Even if I got a clean line through Rouge, there was no catching him, so just hoping for a mistake, and yeah, I was really close at the end there, just sort of went for it.
So I have to ask you, we were speculating in the booth a little bit. It seemed like at the end, especially through Blanchiment and a little bit through the end of the lap on a couple of points, you were running wide. Was that a calculation of I got to keep my speed up here, or we've heard some of the tires going off as well?
You got to play by the rules, and there's no rules that you can't do that. You got an incident limit, so I was full send through most of theirs to use up the incident points.
We were right then. Kudos, man. That's exactly what I would have done in that position. Well, next week we go to Imola, a little bit different, not as much runoff area. How do you think that's going to go next time out?
I think it's going to be an identical race between Binkley, Bennett, and I. And I'm not sure what happened to Park, but I think he'll be right up there too. I think it's anybody's game, honestly, in the GT Pro. It's get up front, don't have incident on lap 1, and hang on for a heck of a battle.
Well, my friend, if it's anything like it was today, I cannot wait to watch it. Congratulations again on a good race. Anybody you need to thank before we let you go?
I just want to thank everyone that supports me, and shout out to my team, Satellite Racing. I think we all had a really strong effort today with Jason third, me second, and Ryan Robertson third. So we're looking good in the team championship, and can't wait to get to them well.
We cannot wait either, Ross. Congratulations again. And now for our final interview, Joe Peak has caught up with the LMP2 driver, Jason DeVries.
Yes, indeed, Jason, with another third place here today. Jason, it looked like you had quite a battle on your hands, especially early on in the race.
Yeah, I'm surprised y'all are chatting with me. There's so many guys that did good finishes, but it was a really good battle. Probably not the best decision by me to be battling on stint 1. I think we let the race get away from us, but that was just the decision by me to engage in that, and it was fun though. I had a blast out there.
After last night and here tonight, you've had two three-class races in a row. Are you ready to take a little break and a breather to let your brain calm down?
Yeah, it's been a lot of driving. I want to go back and watch the replay and just see some of my traffic management, because the last 2 nights I felt like I wasn't as good as I normally am in there. So I just want to see how I'm reading traffic and what I can do to improve. But yeah, it'll be nice to rest the shoulders and legs a bit. 2.4 yesterday and then 90 today at 2 different tracks. It's a lot of driving.
How much did the track change? We had so much action. We really didn't get to talk much about the weather, but obviously the sunset would probably lead to cooler temperatures. Did you feel much in the car transitioning from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, it felt like the track freed up a bit. In fact, when I started the race, I tightened the car up just a little bit to try to better account for the end of the race, knowing that it'd probably be a little bit miserable that first stint. But it felt like it had a lot of speed the whole race. And as the track thinned out and the sun went down, it got really fast, and you could go faster in the aero bits of the track, and the thing was just under you. Tires weren't an issue at all.
Well, sounds like a fun one to drive for sure. Again, congratulations on another podium to add to your belt here this season. Anybody you'd like to thank before you go?
Yeah, I've missed this the last couple times, but I just want to give a shout out to the guys running the league behind the scenes. Paul, Lindsay, Carter Kundinger, Kevin Santana. It's pretty incredible. We've done this thing for 10 years now, and those guys carry a lot of responsibility, and they're quite the unsung heroes in the league. So thank you all for everything that you do. GSRC for broadcasting, VRS Satellite Racing for supporting me and helping us get this car put together. And we look forward to seeing you at EMLA in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, it's getting ready for the 24 Daytona. So pretty excited about the next couple of weeks.
Great stuff. That was our third place finisher, Jason DeVries, here in the LMP2 class. That's going to close us out. Of course, we also want to give a big thank you to the organizers for bringing us back for another season of coverage of the Autobahn series. It's one of our favorites. And of course, thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts that we've listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to Juno Law, who provides our wonderful music. Her Bandcamp, where you can find more of her work, is there listed at the bottom. And thanks to the team today, Sean, Chad, DJ, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. There's also our social media, which includes our Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support us, we've got a merchandise store at gsrc.storenvy.com. We've got a link in the description below, but while you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC's YouTube page. The next race will be in 2 weeks' time at Imola, just hopping over to Italy. That'll be Monday, February 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern. But we have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.